Fellow Barbadians and members of the media, with me I have my colleagues, the Honorable Attorney General, Mr. Dale Marshall, and the Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness, my Honorable Jeffrey Bostic. We are definitely practicing physical distancing as required at stage 3 of our response to the COVID-19 virus. Since last night's press statement, which I made, the Chief Medical Officer has confirmed the presence of one more case out of 33 persons who had been tested of COVID-19 in Barbados. This now brings our total number of cases to 46. Our observations thus far continue to be that there are large groups of persons congregating across the island, even in spite of the persistent warnings of the dangers of so doing. As we continue our discussions with our stakeholders, the members of the Cabinet Subcommittee in respect of COVID-19 met this morning with the owners of a number of supermarkets, gas stations, and bakeries across the island. Amongst the concerns expressed at that meeting unanimously by those present are that even up to this morning, a large number of persons continue to congregate, in particular outside these supermarkets. I have discussed the matter with the Chief Medical Officer as well as the Minister of Health and Wellness, and they are both of the view that we cannot further delay the closure of supermarkets and mini-marts across the island based on the current trends. To do otherwise will have deleterious effects on the well-being of our citizens. Therefore, for the avoidance of any doubt, the curfew which we impose on this country is a 24-hour curfew, unless there is legitimate business which will require you to leave your home and to be on the road. You can only be on the road to go to the pharmacy, to seek medical assistance, or if you are part of the essential services, or if you are doing business with any of the businesses which are exempted under this order. Therefore, as of 5 p.m. tomorrow, Friday the 3rd of April, all supermarkets and mini-marts shall remain closed until further notice. We are in discussions with supermarket owners to see how we can certainly be able to provide through electronic commerce, as well as perhaps a staggering of allowing persons across the country to be able to access the services, particularly the most vulnerable in that category, to allow them to be able to fulfill specific grocery orders. And those discussions are ongoing, and we will continue to update the country as it relates to that. There are thousands who buy their groceries every day from what in Barbados we consider the village shops. And I want the public to appreciate that we have not placed the restriction on the village shops because we understand and appreciate that persons will normally visit the village shops in order to get basic groceries. That said, we have in the order obviously indicated to the country that we can have no more than 3 persons congregating at a time, and for also the purpose of the village shops that no alcoholic beverages will be able to be sold. So essentially we are asking the village shop owners to ensure that they just simply provide the necessary dispatch of groceries to persons living in those communities, but to curtail and to ensure that there are clear restrictions on persons congregating for more than 3, and also that there are no alcoholic beverages which are sold. I want to reiterate that all restaurants shall remain closed until midnight on the 14th of April 2020. Again, the sale of alcoholic beverages will also be prohibited for the duration of this period. Automarts at gas stations will only be open for the sale of top-ups, but I want to make the point that gas stations will remain open because we recognize that a number of the essential service providers will obviously have to move around the country, and they will obviously be at the center of being able to utilize the service. Obviously, if persons are going to the doctor or they're making their way back home as a result of the top-up, obviously that will be permissible at this point in time. The sale of bread from bakeries and bread depots will also remain in place in terms of them persons being able to purchase from those bakeries and bread depots. Again, culturally, we also recognize that there's a large percentage of persons that from day to day will often visit the bread shops. They may not have the disposable income as some in the country to be able to stock up on large quantities of food, and we want at this point to be able to allow them to be able to maintain their presence purchasing those items. I want to also reiterate that all government departments will remain closed unless otherwise specified by the head of the civil service. The head of the civil service will send out a memo to all ministries indicating who will be required to come to work. And that relationship obviously will be further clarified with the permanent secretaries of the respective government departments. I want to give the country the assurance that this government will continue to monitor the situation. As I would have said last night, this is a very fluid situation, and we continue to be in discussions with our stakeholders. But there will be further COVID directives over the course, no doubt, of the next few days, and certainly during this period, as we continue as a government to work with its respective stakeholders to monitor the situation and to do right by the people of Barbados. I thank you.
Do we have any questions?
Good afternoon, Minister. Acting Prime Minister, sorry, Barry Ali from the Nation newspaper here. There was a brief, about 25, 35 seconds where your audio did not come over. And it was exactly at the point where you wanted to speak about what restrictions would be made re supermarkets. Unfortunately, we think you may have to go over that. So we crave your indulgence.
Okay. Are you ready? Thank you very much for that, Barry. Ready?
Go ahead, Minister.
So for the avoidance of any doubt, the curfew which is in place is a 24-hour curfew. Unless there is a legitimate business which will require you to leave your home and to be on the road. So for the avoidance of any doubt, the curfew which is in place. I'm hearing some feedback. Again. Okay. So for the avoidance of any doubt, the curfew is a 24-hour curfew unless there is a legitimate business which will require you to leave your home and to be on the road. You can only be on the road to go to the pharmacy, to seek medical assistance, or if you are part of any of the essential services, or if you are doing business with any of the businesses which are exempted under the order. Therefore, as of 5 p.m. tomorrow, Friday the 3rd of April, all supermarkets and mini-marts shall remain closed until further notice. We are in discussions with the supermarket owners to see how we can engage in some form of electronic commerce, which would obviously allow persons to be able to fulfill grocery orders. And those discussions are continuing. Those who might not be able to use the e-commerce facilities, we intend obviously at some point to be able to have those deeper negotiations with them to see how we may be able to allow persons to get their groceries. There are thousands who buy their groceries every single day from what we commonly refer to in Barbados as our village shops. And for a large cross-section of Barbadians, that is how they will get their oil, that is how they're going to get their flour. But we also accept that in a number of these village shops, the sale of alcohol is also quite common, and that is why we have also prohibited the sale of alcohol during this particular period. I want to remind the village shop owners that during this period, no more than 3 persons are allowed to congregate, and I would ask their indulgence in ensuring that they simply dispatch the goods to customers and allow persons to be able to return to their home. So really the main purpose is to allow for the dispatch of pretty much essential items. I want to also reiterate that all restaurants should remain closed until midnight on the 14th of April. The sale of alcoholic beverages will also be prohibited for the duration of this period. The automarts at gas stations will only be open for the sale of top-ups, but otherwise gas stations will still remain open to the public. Again, a number of our essential service providers will require access to these facilities, as well as persons who are legitimately leaving their homes in order to go to the pharmacies and to all of the other exempt services in order to be able to fill up their vehicles. The sale of bread from the bakeries as well as bread depots will also remain open during this period. It is our feeling that a number of Barbadians often utilize the bakeries in order to be able to purchase their bread and their other items, other pastries, and it is important at this time that they are able to continue to do so. But we will be continuing to monitor the situation, and the Honourable Attorney General has assured me that where entities remain open, there will be police presence, heightened police presence across Barbados. I want to reiterate that all government departments will remain closed unless otherwise specified by the head of the civil service. The head of the civil service will send out a memo to all ministries indicating who will be required to come to work. And in the directive, it will clearly state that a memo will be issued by the head of the civil service. So for persons who work in the public sector, they can stay tuned for that memo to be able to guide them as to whether they are required at this time to be at work. We will continue to monitor this situation. It is a very fluid situation, as I would have said last night. It is one that the dynamics are constantly changing, and our response has to continually be one where we protect the public interest. So I think the public can expect that there may be further changes, but at this stage we have put in place what we consider to be a response to the concerns expressed by not just average Barbadians, but also by our respective stakeholders in terms of the handling in particular of the supermarkets and the mini-marts across the country.
Acting Prime Minister, a question.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I believe that most Barbadians will be reflecting seriously on these additional restrictions that have been placed on them. But let me say that no restrictions are going to be effective unless they're effectively policed. And I want to say to Barbadians that the police and all of our civil authorities are fully behind these measures and will not be leaving anything to chance. It's not just a question of heightened presence. I want to assure you that these restrictions are going to be taken very seriously and that individuals will be charged by the Royal Barbados Police Force if they continue to fly in the face of the law. Over the last few days, even though we had said construction was to end, we found that a number of people were continuing to work on houses, and we've actually had to send out police officers to shut those projects down, and we've warned them in very strong terms that if they continue to try to do any of that kind of work, they're going to be arrested. There's too much at stake, and it is important that Barbadians recognize that the time has now come when the government has to not only impose strong strictures, but also to impose a strong enforcement mechanism. Already you know that one person has been charged for breaking curfew. I understand that other individuals have been held by the police, and so I think you can expect that if reckless behavior continues, the response of the Royal Barbados Police Force will be commensurate. Prime Minister?
Question for you, Acting Prime Minister. Since your address last night, there has been a heavy amount of public discourse.
I just want to thank you all for having the patience with us. We really should have been able to address the country before, but as you would appreciate, we were in a cabinet meeting after we would have met with our various stakeholders, and we just want to encourage Barbadians to just pay attention to the updates from reliable sources, the Government Information Service. There's a lot of fake news that is circulating in the media, and we would want you to err on the side of caution in relation to taking on board things that are not quite accurate, and therefore we will continue to update you. I believe the directive will be available for publication later today. In the event that there requires any concerns need to be addressed or for further clarity, but I just want to thank you all for your attention.
Question for you, Acting Prime Minister. Are you taking questions now?